This is the Angelic Hierarchy Iceberg. Like other iceberg videos, we're going to talk about the most well-known angelic beings at the top, going to the most obscure and slightly forbidden at the bottom. I also went ahead and included in the final tier some more esoteric and controversial angelic-related topics. Let me know in the comments where you're watching this from. I love seeing our Sigil Sanctum community spread across the globe. If angelic mysteries and celestial hierarchies are something that interests you, make sure to subscribe to Sigil Sanctum for more esoteric deep dives. Now let's stop wasting time and get right in, starting with Tier 1, Guardian Angels. Most people think they have a guardian angel watching over them, but the actual concept is way more specific and complex than you might think. The idea comes from Matthew 18:10, where Jesus says that children have angels that always see God's face. But this single verse has sparked centuries of debate about exactly how guardian angels work. Early Christian writers like Saint Jerome believed that everyone gets assigned exactly one guardian angel at birth, and that angel stays with you until you die, never leaving your side even for a moment. The Catholic Church made this official doctrine in 1670, stating that guardian angels have three main jobs. They protect you from physical harm, they inspire good thoughts and guide your conscience, and they present your prayers directly to God like a personal messenger service. But here's where it gets really interesting. Guardian angels supposedly can't interfere with your free will, which is why bad things still happen to good people. They can only guide and suggest, never force you to do anything. According to St. Thomas Aquinas, your guardian angel knows everything about you except your private thoughts, which remain between you and God. Some traditions say that guardian angels are actually souls of people who lived particularly holy lives, while others claim they're a separate creation entirely. The really wild part is that different religious traditions disagree on when you get your guardian angel. Catholics say it's at birth, some Orthodox traditions say it's at baptism, and certain Jewish texts suggest you get multiple guardian angels throughout your life depending on your actions. There are also specific prayers and rituals for communicating with your guardian angel. The traditional Catholic prayer asks your guardian angel to light, guard, rule, and guide you. But some mystics developed elaborate methods for actually conversing with their guardian angel. St. Padre Pio claimed he could send his guardian angel to deliver messages to other people's guardian angels, essentially creating an angelic postal service. And according to some accounts, your guardian angel supposedly weeps when you sin and rejoices when you do good, meaning they're emotionally invested in your spiritual journey. The concept has become so embedded in popular culture that even non-religious people often reference their guardian angel when they narrowly avoid danger, showing how this ancient belief continues to resonate across all backgrounds. Archangel Michael. Michael is probably the most famous angel in existence, and for good reason. He's basically heaven's military commander and God's personal bodyguard. His name literally means, "Who is like God?" and it's actually a rhetorical question, not a statement. The implied answer is, no one, which was supposedly Michael's battle cry when he fought Satan during the war in heaven. According to the book of Revelation, Michael led God's army against the dragon, which represents Satan, and cast him out of heaven. But here's what makes Michael unique among all angels. He's the only one in the Bible who's specifically called an archangel, giving him a rank above pretty much everyone else in the celestial hierarchy.
In Islamic tradition, he's known as Mikail and has completely different responsibilities. He's in charge of bringing rain, thunder, and providing nourishment to human bodies and souls. The Quran describes him as having emerald green wings and being covered in saffron hairs, with each hair containing 1,000,000 faces and tongues that ask forgiveness for believers. Jewish tradition gives Michael even more jobs. He's supposedly the one who prevented Abraham from sacrificing Isaac. He wrestled with Jacob, and he's the prince protector of Israel, who will stand up for the Jewish people during the end times. The really interesting thing about Michael is that he appears in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, making him one of the few religious figures all three faiths agree on, though they disagree about his exact role. In the book of Daniel, he's called the Great Prince who stands guard over your people, referring to his role as protector of Israel. Many military units throughout history have claimed him as their patron saint, including the paratroopers of multiple armies who pray to him before jumping out of planes. The Byzantine Empire put his image on their coins because they believed he would protect their armies in battle, and medieval knights often carried banners with his image. But Michael's job isn't just military. He's also the psychopomp, the angel who guides souls to the afterlife. In Catholic tradition, Michael weighs souls on a scale during the final judgment, and he's often depicted holding these scales in religious art. Some traditions say he gives each soul one final chance to repent right before death, which explains deathbed conversions. The Eastern Orthodox Church celebrates 3 separate feast days for Michael, recognizing him as healer, protector, and guide. There are also numerous apparitions of Michael reported throughout history, including his famous appearance to Joan of Arc, where he supposedly told her to drive the English out of France and crown the Dauphin as king. Archangel Gabriel. Gabriel is basically God's ultimate messenger service, but calling him just a messenger is like calling the ocean just water. It doesn't capture the full scope of what this angel does. The name Gabriel means God is my strength, and this angel appears at every single major announcement in religious history. In Christianity, Gabriel told Mary she would give birth to Jesus in what's called the Annunciation, but this wasn't Gabriel's first big assignment. Earlier, Gabriel appeared to Zechariah to announce that his wife Elizabeth would give birth to John the Baptist, and when Zechariah didn't believe it, Gabriel struck him mute until the prophecy came true. In Islam, Gabriel, known as Jibril, revealed the entire Quran to Muhammad over 23 years, making him not just a messenger, but essentially a divine teacher. Islamic tradition describes Gabriel in his true form as having 600 wings, and when he appeared to Muhammad like this, he was so massive that he blocked out the entire horizon from east to west. But here's something most people miss. Gabriel isn't always gentle. In Islamic accounts, when Gabriel first appeared to Muhammad in the cave of Hira, he grabbed the prophet so tightly that Muhammad thought he was going to die, and Gabriel commanded him to read 3 times before revealing the first verses of the Quran. Jewish tradition gives Gabriel even more responsibilities. The Talmud says Gabriel sits on the left side of God's throne while Michael sits on the right, and Gabriel is the angel of divine judgment and punishment. According to Jewish texts, Gabriel was responsible for destroying Sodom and Gomorrah, which shows that God's messengers aren't always bringing good news. Gabriel is also supposed to be the angel who will blow the great shofar to announce the coming of the Messiah, and some traditions say Gabriel taught Moses how to write while they were on Mount Sinai. In the Book of Enoch, Gabriel is one of the 4 archangels who stand before God, and his specific job is to watch over paradise and guard it with a fiery sword. But Gabriel also has a softer side. According to some traditions, Gabriel is the angel who comforts people during times of grief and loss. The angel is often associated with the element of water and the direction west, and some mystical traditions invoke Gabriel for emotional healing and purification. Gabriel is also supposed to be the angel who will announce the resurrection of the dead on Judgment Day, making him present at both the beginning and end of the divine plan for humanity. Angels of death. The idea of death angels exists in pretty much every major religion, but they're not all the same entity, and they're definitely not the grim reaper figure you see in movies. In Islam, there's Azrael, whose name means help of God, and he's got one of the most complex jobs in all of creation. Islamic tradition says Azrael has 4,000 wings and his body is covered with millions of eyes and tongues, 1 eye and 1 tongue for every person who will ever live. When someone's time comes, one of these eyes closes forever, and that person's name disappears from the tongue. Azrael supposedly knows exactly when everyone will die, but he doesn't decide. He just carries out God's will with perfect obedience. The really fascinating part about Azrael is that Islamic texts describe him as incredibly compassionate. When God commanded him to collect dust from all parts of the earth to create Adam, Azrael was the only angel who succeeded because he understood the gravity of the task. Other angels failed because they took pity on the earth when it begged them not to take its dust. Because of this success, God appointed Azrael as the angel of death, but also gave him the ability to appear to each person in whatever form would be most comforting to them. For believers, he appears beautiful and gentle, but for those who rejected faith, he appears terrible and frightening. In Judaism, the angel of death is sometimes called Malach Hamavet, and according to the Talmud, this angel is covered in eyes from head to toe and carries a sword dripping with poison. The Talmud provides incredibly specific details. The angel of death supposedly stands at the head of every dying person, and when they open their mouth to speak their final words, a drop of poison falls from the angel's sword into their mouth, causing immediate death. This explains why people sometimes struggle to speak in their final moments. Jewish tradition also says that the angel of death has no power over people who are studying Torah, which is why some religious Jews try to die with sacred words on their lips. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Some Jewish texts describe multiple death angels working in shifts around the clock, which would explain why death happens at all hours of the day and night. These angels supposedly report to a chief angel of death who keeps detailed records of every soul. Christianity is less specific about death angels, usually just referring to them as angels who separate souls from bodies, but some Christian mystics have described elaborate hierarchies of death angels with different specialties, some for natural deaths, others for accidental deaths, and still others for martyrs. There are also cultural variations on death angels that blend religious and folk traditions. In Mexican culture, Santa Muerte, Saint Death, is sometimes considered an angel of death who can be petitioned for protection and favors. Some spiritualist traditions speak of transition angels who help souls cross over to the afterlife, acting more like guides than executioners. The common thread across all these traditions is that death angels are not evil, they're simply fulfilling their divine purpose as part of the natural order of creation, Seraphim. These are the angels that are literally on fire, and they're about as close to God as any created being can get without being consumed entirely. The word seraphim means burning ones, and they're only mentioned once in the Bible, in Isaiah chapter 6, but that single mention is so vivid and terrifying that it's influenced angelology for thousands of years. Here's Isaiah's description. Each seraphim has 6 wings, 2 to cover their faces because even they cannot look directly at God's glory, 2 to cover their feet, which some scholars interpret as a euphemism for covering their genitals out of modesty, and 2 for flying around God's throne. But the really intense part is what they do while flying. They constantly call out to each other saying, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts, the whole earth is full of his glory." According to Jewish mystical interpretation, they say this phrase exactly every 365 days, meaning each word takes about 4 months to complete. The sound of their voices is so powerful that it shakes the foundations of heaven's threshold, and the temple fills with smoke from their fiery presence. When one of the seraphim touched Isaiah's lips with a burning coal from God's altar, it completely purified him of sin, showing that their fire isn't destructive but purifying. According to Jewish mysticism, particularly the Kabbalah, seraphim are made of pure fire and divine love, and they're so close to God that they would be instantly destroyed if they looked directly at him, which is why they cover their faces. The medieval Jewish philosopher Maimonides ranked them as the highest order of angels, above even the cherubim, because their only function is pure worship and love of God. Some traditions say there are only 4 seraphim total, corresponding to the 4 cardinal directions around God's throne, while others claim there are 7, representing perfect divine completion. The early church father Dionysius the Areopagite, who basically created the standard Christian understanding of angelic hierarchy, placed seraphim at the very top of the 9 choirs of angels. According to his system, seraphim are so overwhelmed by divine love that they inspire this same burning love in the angels below them, creating a cascade of divine passion throughout heaven. Some Christian mystics have reported visions of seraphim and described them as beings of such intense beauty and holiness that human language completely fails to capture their essence. What's really interesting is that the Hebrew word saraph also appears elsewhere in the Bible, referring to fiery serpents that bit the Israelites in the desert, leading some scholars to suggest that seraphim might have serpentine qualities. This has led to fascinating theological debates about whether seraphim are humanoid figures with wings or more dragon-like beings of pure fire. Either way, they represent the ultimate expression of created beings in perfect harmony with divine will, burning with love for God so intensely that they've become fire themselves. Cherubim. Forget everything you think you know about cute baby angels with harps. Real cherubim are absolutely terrifying cosmic beings that would give you nightmares for the rest of your life. According to Ezekiel's vision in chapters 1 and 10, cherubim have 4 faces: a human face representing intelligence, a lion face representing courage and royal power, an ox face representing strength and service, and an eagle face representing swiftness and divine insight. But that's just the beginning of how weird they get. They also have 4 wings covered completely in eyes, and their feet are like calves' feet that sparkle like polished bronze. Their wings make a sound like rushing water or an army when they move. But wait, it gets much weirder. Ezekiel describes these beings as being accompanied by wheels within wheels that are also covered in eyes, and these wheels move in any direction without turning, following wherever the cherubim go. The wheels are called Ophanim in Hebrew, and some traditions consider them to be separate angelic beings entirely. The eyes covering both the cherubim and their wheels represent their ability to see everything, past, present, and future, with perfect divine knowledge. When the cherubim move, the wheels move with them, and when they stop, the wheels stop, showing perfect unity between these cosmic beings. In Genesis, God places cherubim with flaming swords to guard the entrance to the Garden of Eden after Adam and Eve are kicked out, making them the first security guards in history. But these aren't just any guards. They're wielding weapons of pure divine fire that can apparently keep humans away from the Tree of Life permanently. The golden cherubim on top of the Ark of the Covenant weren't just decorations. They were meant to represent the real cherubim that surround God's throne in heaven. According to Jewish tradition, God's presence would appear between these golden cherubim when the high priest entered the Holy of Holies. Islamic tradition calls them cherubim and describes them as beings so completely devoted to worship that they never raise their heads to look at anything except God. They supposedly spend eternity in perfect prostration, and their worship is so pure that it serves as a model for all other created beings. Some Islamic texts describe them as having 70,000 heads, with each head having 70,000 mouths, and each mouth having 70,000 tongues that praise God in 70,000 different languages simultaneously. Jewish mystical texts provide even more bizarre details about cherubim. Some sources say they're actually the souls of children who died young, transformed into these powerful angelic beings as a reward for their innocence. Other Kabbalistic texts describe cherubim as living representations of the divine chariot that carries God's throne through the heavens. The medieval Jewish text called 3 Enoch claims that cherubim are made of fire and ice simultaneously, representing the perfect balance of God's justice and mercy. Their 4 faces supposedly correspond to the 4 elements, the 4 seasons, and the 4 cardinal directions, making them cosmic beings who embody the entire created order. Archangel Raphael. Raphael's name means God heals, and he's basically heaven's chief medical officer, but his healing powers go way beyond what any earthly doctor could ever accomplish. He's most famous from the Book of Tobit, which isn't included in most Protestant Bibles but is considered canonical by Catholics and Orthodox Christians. In this story, Raphael disguises himself as a human guide named Azarias to help a young man named Tobias go on a journey to collect a debt and find a wife. But this isn't just any travel companion. Raphael is secretly orchestrating a complex divine plan that will heal multiple people and defeat a demon. During their journey, Raphael teaches Tobias some pretty wild ancient medicine. When they catch a fish, Raphael tells Tobias to save the heart, liver, and gallbladder because these organs have special powers. The heart and liver, when burned, will drive away demons, and the gallbladder can cure blindness. This might sound like superstition, but remember that Raphael is an archangel. He's not teaching folk medicine, he's revealing divine secrets about how spiritual and physical healing actually work. When they reach their destination, Tobias uses the fish heart and liver to drive away a demon named Asmodeus, who has been killing every man who tries to marry a woman named Sarah. Then he uses the gallbladder to cure his father's blindness. But Raphael's healing ministry goes way beyond this one story. According to the Book of Enoch, God sent Raphael to heal the entire earth after it was corrupted by the fallen angels called the Watchers. These fallen angels had taught humans forbidden knowledge like warfare, cosmetics, and sorcery, and their giant offspring called the Nephilim were destroying everything. Raphael's job was to bind the fallen angel Azazel and heal the spiritual damage done to creation itself. This makes Raphael not just a personal healer, but a cosmic physician who can repair damage done to reality itself. Jewish tradition credits Raphael with some pretty amazing healing feats. He supposedly healed Abraham after his circumcision when Abraham was 99 years old, and since ancient circumcision was way more dangerous than modern procedures, this was probably a life-saving intervention. Some traditions say Raphael gave Noah all the medical knowledge needed to keep the animals healthy during their year-long voyage on the ark, essentially making him the first veterinarian. The Talmud suggests that Raphael taught King Solomon about medicinal herbs and how to use them, which explains Solomon's reputation for wisdom about the natural world. Catholic tradition has made Raphael the patron saint of doctors, nurses, pharmacists, and travelers, which makes perfect sense given his activities in the Book of Tobit. But he's also the patron saint of the blind, mental illness, and happy meetings between spouses, showing how his healing extends to physical, mental, and relationship problems. Some Catholic saints have reported receiving medical knowledge directly from Raphael in visions, including detailed instructions for treating specific diseases that weren't understood at the time. In Islamic tradition, Raphael is known as Israfil, but he has a completely different primary job. He's the angel who will blow the trumpet to announce the day of judgment. The trumpet is supposedly so large that it stretches from earth to heaven, and when Israfil blows it, everyone on earth will die instantly. Then he'll blow it again to resurrect everyone for final judgment. Some Islamic texts describe Israfil as having 4 wings, with one wing covering the east, one covering the west, one covering the north, and one covering the south, making him a cosmic figure who encompasses the entire world. Archangel Uriel. Uriel is probably the most metal of all the archangels, and his job description reads like something from an action movie where the hero has to save the world by destroying it first. His name means either fire of God or light of God, depending on how you translate the Hebrew, but either way, his specialty is being God's ultimate enforcer when divine justice needs to be carried out. According to the Book of Enoch, Uriel is the angel who guards the gates of Eden with a fiery sword, making him the bouncer who keeps humanity from returning to paradise until we've earned it back. But Uriel's most famous intervention was warning Noah about the coming flood. According to 1 Enoch, God sent Uriel to tell Noah exactly how to build the ark and when the flood would come, making Uriel responsible for saving humanity from total extinction. This wasn't just a friendly heads up. Uriel gave Noah precise engineering specifications for a boat that could survive a global catastrophe, essentially making him heaven's disaster management specialist. Some traditions say Uriel also taught Noah about astronomy and the calendar, giving him the knowledge needed to track seasons and years during and after the flood. But here's where Uriel gets really intense. He's also the angel of divine retribution and final judgment. The Book of Esdras, which is considered canonical by some Eastern Orthodox churches, describes Uriel as the angel who will torment people on Judgment Day who didn't follow God's laws during their lifetime. Unlike Michael, who fights external enemies, or Gabriel, who delivers messages, Uriel's job is to bring consequences to people who knew better but chose to do wrong anyway. This makes him terrifying to anyone with a guilty conscience, but comforting to people who've suffered injustice and want to see things made right. Some traditions describe Uriel as the angel who will destroy the world with fire at the end of times, essentially acting as God's nuclear option for cosmic renovation. But this isn't destruction for its own sake, it's purification, burning away everything corrupt so that a new, perfect world can take its place. In Milton's Paradise Lost, Uriel is called the sharpest-sighted spirit of all in heaven because nothing can hide from his gaze. He can see through any deception, illusion, or attempt to hide wrongdoing, making him the ultimate divine detective. Eastern Orthodox tradition gives Uriel some additional responsibilities that show his gentler side. He's supposed to be the angel who brings divine inspiration to artists, writers, and musicians, helping them create works that reflect divine beauty and truth. He's also associated with repentance and helping people recognize their mistakes so they can change course before it's too late. Some Orthodox icons show Uriel holding a scroll or book, representing his role in bringing divine wisdom and knowledge to humanity. Jewish mystical texts describe Uriel as one of the 4 archangels who stand at the 4 corners of God's throne, specifically representing the direction north and the element of earth. According to Kabbalistic tradition, Uriel is the angel who helps people understand the deeper meaning of suffering and hardship, showing them how difficult experiences can lead to spiritual growth and greater wisdom. Unlike the other archangels who often appear in human form, Uriel is sometimes described as appearing as pure light or fire, making his presence unmistakable but also potentially overwhelming for humans who encounter him. That covers our first tier of well-known angels, but we're just getting started on this cosmic journey through the celestial hierarchy. In Tier 2, we're going to dive into the biblical archangels that most people have heard of but don't really understand, including some angels whose names you definitely can't pronounce and whose jobs are way stranger and more specific than you think. We'll explore the archangels who control the weather and natural disasters, the ones who keep detailed records of every human soul that's ever lived, the angel whose voice is so powerful it could shatter mountains, and the mysterious figures who appear in ancient texts with abilities that sound more like science fiction than religious doctrine. We'll also look at some angels whose very existence is debated among different religious traditions and discover why certain angelic names were considered so powerful that speaking them out loud was forbidden except in the most sacred circumstances. The rabbit hole of angelic hierarchy goes much deeper than Sunday school ever taught you, so stick around as we descend further into the celestial mysteries that have fascinated and terrified humanity for thousands of years. Tier 2. Biblical archangels. Now we're moving into territory that gets significantly more complex and way more specific than most people realize. The archangels in Tier 2 aren't just the famous 4 that everyone knows. There are actually 7 archangels mentioned in various biblical and apocryphal texts, and each one has incredibly specialized jobs that reveal just how organized and detailed the heavenly hierarchy really is. These aren't just generic messengers or warriors. They're cosmic specialists with very particular areas of expertise. Archangel Raguel's name means friend of God, or God's vengeance, and his job is basically being heaven's internal affairs investigator. According to the Book of Enoch, Raguel is the archangel responsible for making sure that all the other angels are doing their jobs correctly and following divine law. Think of him as the angel who watches the watchers. When angels step out of line or abuse their power, Raguel is the one who investigates and brings them to justice. This makes him one of the most feared figures in heaven because even other archangels have to answer to him if they mess up. The Book of Enoch specifically states that Raguel takes vengeance on the world of the luminaries, which means he punishes angels who fail in their duties. During the rebellion of the fallen angels, Raguel was supposedly one of the key figures involved in tracking down and punishing the Watchers who had corrupted humanity. But his job isn't just reactive. He also prevents angelic corruption by constantly monitoring the behavior of heavenly beings and reporting directly to God about any problems he discovers. What makes Raguel particularly interesting is that his authority extends over both good and fallen angels. According to some texts, even demons have to respect his jurisdiction when he's carrying out divine justice. Some traditions describe him as having the power to strip angels of their abilities and cast them into lower realms if they violate heavenly law. This makes him incredibly powerful, but also somewhat isolated, since other angels tend to be nervous around someone whose job is to potentially punish them. Jewish mystical texts suggest that Raguel is also responsible for ensuring that human prayers reach the right angels and that divine messages are delivered correctly. Essentially, he's the quality control manager for the entire system of communication between heaven and earth. Some sources claim that invoking Raguel's name can help resolve conflicts and bring justice to situations where people have been wronged. But doing so requires absolute certainty that you're in the right, because Raguel will investigate all sides of any situation with perfect objectivity. Archangel Remiel. Remiel's name means thunder of God, or God has raised, and he's got one of the most unique jobs in all of heaven. He's responsible for divine visions and prophecies. According to Sue Esdras, Remiel is the angel who guides souls through the process of receiving revelations from God, essentially acting as a divine interpreter who helps humans understand messages that would otherwise be incomprehensible. When prophets receive visions of the future or mystical experiences, Remiel is often the angel facilitating that communication. But Remiel's job gets even more specific than that. The Book of Enoch describes him as one of the angels who will guide the faithful during the resurrection of the dead. When the end times come and people are raised from their graves, Remiel will help orient them to their new reality and explain what's happening. This makes him a sort of cosmic tour guide for one of the most confusing experiences any human soul could possibly have.
Some traditions also give Remiel responsibility for overseeing the punishment of fallen angels, working alongside Raguel, but focusing specifically on angels who gave forbidden knowledge to humans. According to these texts, Remiel is the angel who ensures that the consequences for angelic rebellion are carried out properly, and that the cosmic balance is restored after it's been disrupted by supernatural interference in human affairs. Jewish apocalyptic literature describes Remiel as having particular authority over thunder and earthquakes, which explains part of his name. When God wants to get humanity's attention through natural phenomena, Remiel is supposedly the angel who coordinates these displays of divine power. Some mystical texts suggest that thunder is actually the sound of Remiel's voice delivering messages that humans can't consciously understand, but that their souls receive on a deeper level. Archangel Sariel. Sariel's name means command of God or prince of God, and he's the archangel with perhaps the most terrifying job description in all of biblical literature. According to the Book of Enoch, Sariel is specifically responsible for punishing angels who sin, but not just any sins. He deals with angels who violate the cosmic order by interfering with human sexuality and reproduction. This makes him the enforcer for some of the most fundamental laws governing the relationship between the spiritual and physical worlds. The really intense part about Sariel is that his punishments aren't just spiritual. They're described as involving actual cosmic destruction. Some texts suggest that Sariel has the power to cause stars to fall from heaven and to shake the foundations of the earth itself when carrying out divine justice. This connects him to some of the most apocalyptic imagery in biblical prophecy, where cosmic disasters are described as signs of divine judgment. But Sariel also has a protective function that balances his role as punisher. According to some traditions, he's the angel who protects people from the evil influence of fallen angels, particularly in matters related to sexuality and family relationships. When humans are being tempted or corrupted by demonic forces, Sariel can intervene to break those spiritual attacks and restore proper spiritual boundaries. Jewish mystical texts describe Sariel as one of the angels who stands before God's throne and receives direct commands about when and how to intervene in human affairs. Some sources suggest that he's particularly active during times of great moral corruption, when societies have become so spiritually polluted that only dramatic divine intervention can restore balance. This makes him both a figure of hope for the righteous and a source of terror for those who persistently choose evil. Archangel Jeremiel. Jeremiel's name means God will have mercy, or mercy of God, and he represents one of the most comforting aspects of divine justice, the possibility of redemption even after death. According to Sao Esdras, Jeremiel is the archangel who helps souls review their lives after they die, showing them both their good deeds and their failures with perfect clarity, and helping them understand the spiritual consequences of their choices. This life review process isn't described as punishment, but as education. Jeremiel supposedly helps souls understand why certain things happened in their lives, and how their choices affected not just themselves, but other people and the spiritual world as a whole. This gives souls the opportunity to genuinely repent for their mistakes and to appreciate the full significance of their good actions, making the final judgment more about truth and understanding than about arbitrary punishment. Some traditions describe Jeremiel as having the ability to show souls alternate timelines, what their lives could have been like if they had made different choices. This isn't meant to cause regret, but to help souls understand the full weight of free will and the importance of the decisions they made. According to these accounts, this process often leads to profound spiritual healing and growth, even for souls who made serious mistakes during their earthly lives. Jewish apocalyptic literature also gives Jeremiel responsibility for inspiring prophetic dreams and visions that help people understand God's mercy and the possibility of redemption. Unlike some other archangels who bring warnings or judgments, Jeremiel's messages tend to focus on hope and the opportunity for spiritual transformation. Some mystical traditions suggest that invoking Jeremiel can help people who are struggling with guilt or shame to find genuine forgiveness and make peace with their past mistakes. The Archangel Raphael. Raphael's name means blessing of God, and he's the archangel specifically responsible for delivering God's blessings to humanity, but his job is way more complex than just making good things happen to people. According to various apocryphal texts and Eastern Orthodox tradition, Raphael oversees the entire system of divine rewards and ensures that people receive the spiritual and material blessings they've earned through their faith and good works. But Raphael's role isn't just about individual blessings. He's also responsible for blessing entire communities, nations, and even natural systems like weather patterns and agricultural cycles. Some traditions describe him as the angel who ensures that the faithful have what they need to survive and thrive, working behind the scenes to coordinate the complex web of circumstances that allow societies to function and prosper. Eastern Orthodox iconography often depicts Raphael holding white roses or flower petals, symbolizing the beauty and abundance of divine blessings. Some traditions suggest that he's particularly active in blessing marriages, new births, and other life transitions where people need extra divine support. Unlike angels who deal with judgment or warfare, Barachiel represents the purely positive aspect of divine intervention in human life. Jewish mystical texts describe Barachiel as having authority over the angels who govern natural abundance, including the growth of crops, the health of livestock, and the availability of clean water. This makes him incredibly important for agricultural societies, and some traditions include specific prayers to Barachiel during planting and harvest seasons. Some sources also suggest that Barachiel can help people recognize and appreciate the blessings they already have, curing spiritual blindness that prevents people from seeing God's goodness in their lives. Archangel Seraphael. Seraphael's name means prayer of God, and he's the archangel who manages the entire system of human prayer and divine communication. According to Eastern Orthodox tradition, Seraphael is responsible for presenting human prayers to God, organizing them by type and urgency, and ensuring that each prayer receives appropriate divine attention. This makes him essentially the chief of staff for all communication between earth and heaven. But Seraphael's job goes beyond just delivering prayers. He also helps people learn how to pray more effectively and how to align their requests with divine will. Some traditions describe him as inspiring the words of prayers and helping people understand what they should actually be asking for versus what they think they want. This makes him a sort of spiritual advisor who helps humans develop better relationships with the divine. Orthodox iconography typically shows Seraphael in a praying posture with his hands folded and his eyes closed, representing his constant intercession for humanity. Some traditions suggest that he never stops praying, and that his constant prayer creates a sort of spiritual atmosphere that makes it easier for human prayers to reach heaven. This makes him one of the most dedicated and selfless figures in the entire angelic hierarchy. Jewish mystical texts describe Seraphael as having the ability to purify prayers and remove selfish or harmful elements before presenting them to God. According to these sources, when people pray for things that would actually hurt them or others, Seraphael can modify those prayers to focus on what would truly be beneficial. Some traditions also credit him with inspiring the composition of sacred texts and liturgical prayers that have been used by religious communities for centuries. Archangel Gabriel. Gabriel's name means glorifier of God, and he's the archangel responsible for helping people achieve spiritual success and overcome obstacles to their religious development. According to Eastern Orthodox tradition, Gabriel is particularly active in helping people who are struggling with their faith, or who are trying to deepen their spiritual practice but encountering difficulties. What makes Gabriel unique is that his help isn't just spiritual. He also assists with practical matters that affect people's ability to serve God effectively. This includes things like helping people find employment that allows them to maintain their religious principles, protecting religious communities from persecution, and ensuring that people have the resources they need to practice their faith without compromise. Orthodox tradition describes Gabriel as carrying a golden crown, symbolizing the rewards that await those who persevere in their spiritual journey despite difficulties. Some sources suggest that he's particularly helpful to people in religious vocations, priests, monks, nuns, and others who have dedicated their lives to serving God. He supposedly provides them with the strength and wisdom needed to fulfill their calling, even when they face opposition or discouragement. Some mystical traditions also credit Gabriel with helping to organize and protect religious institutions, ensuring that churches, monasteries, and other sacred spaces can continue their mission without being destroyed by external forces. This makes him not just an individual helper, but a guardian of organized religion as a whole. Tier 3. Lesser-known hierarchies. Now we're entering territory that most people have never heard of, but which forms the backbone of how angels are actually organized in heaven. This isn't just about individual famous angels anymore. We're talking about entire categories and ranks of angels, each with specific jobs and places in the cosmic hierarchy. The medieval theologian Dionysius the Areopagite created the standard system that most Christian churches still use today, dividing angels into 9 choirs arranged in 3 spheres, and this organization reveals just how complex and structured the spiritual world really is. The first sphere, Seraphim, Cherubim, and Thrones. We already talked about Seraphim and Cherubim, but the third member of the highest choir of angels is the Thrones, and they might be the weirdest angels in all of creation. Thrones are also called Ophanim in Hebrew, and they're described as living wheels covered in eyes that move in all directions without turning. But calling them wheels doesn't really capture how bizarre they are. According to Ezekiel's vision, they're wheels within wheels, with their rims full of eyes all around, and they move wherever the spirit wants to go without changing direction. Some traditions describe thrones as literally being God's chariot, the vehicle that carries the divine presence through the cosmos. But they're not just transportation. They're conscious beings who are perfectly aligned with God's will, moving instantly wherever divine justice needs to be carried out. Jewish mystical texts suggest that thrones are made of precious stones and metals that exist only in heaven, making them not just spiritual beings but cosmic works of art that reflect divine beauty. The really interesting thing about the first sphere is that these angels are so close to God that they're basically living extensions of divine will. They don't need to think about what to do or receive specific commands. They automatically carry out God's purposes because their nature is perfectly aligned with divine intention. This makes them incredibly powerful, but also completely predictable, since they can never act contrary to God's character. According to Dionysius, the first sphere angels receive divine illumination directly from God, and then pass it down to the lower choirs, creating a cascade of divine knowledge and power throughout heaven. This means that everything the lower angels know and do ultimately comes from the perfect knowledge and will of the Seraphim, Cherubim, and Thrones, making them the source of all angelic activity in creation. The second sphere. Dominions, virtues, and powers. The second sphere is where angels start having jobs that humans can actually understand, though they're still operating on a cosmic scale that's hard to imagine. Dominions, whose name means lordships, are the angels who govern the activities of all the lower angels and ensure that the cosmic order is maintained. They're basically middle management for the universe, taking the pure divine will from the first sphere and translating it into specific instructions for the angels who actually interact with the physical world. But dominions don't just give orders. They also serve as a buffer between the overwhelming divine presence of the first sphere and the more limited capacities of lower angels. According to some traditions, lower angels would be destroyed if they received divine commands directly from Seraphim or Cherubim, so dominions step down the spiritual voltage to levels that other angels can handle while still maintaining the essential divine message. Virtues are the angels responsible for miracles and for maintaining the natural laws that keep the universe functioning. When someone experiences a miraculous healing, or when the laws of physics seem to bend in response to prayer, virtues are supposedly the angels making that happen, but they're also responsible for the opposite, ensuring that miracles don't happen so often that they undermine the natural order and make physical existence impossible. Some traditions describe virtues as having control over the elements and natural forces, including gravity, electromagnetism, and the strong and weak nuclear forces that hold atoms together. This makes them essential for the continued existence of the physical universe, and some mystical texts suggest that if the virtues ever stopped their work, reality itself would collapse back into the chaos that existed before creation. Powers are the warrior angels who maintain the boundaries between the spiritual and physical worlds and prevent demons from causing too much damage to creation. Unlike Michael, who fights specific battles, powers are engaged in constant warfare against forces that would corrupt or destroy the cosmic order. They're described as having authority over evil spirits and the ability to prevent demonic interference in human affairs. But powers also have a darker side. Some traditions suggest that more angels fell from the choir of powers than from any other angelic order. This makes sense because their job requires them to understand evil well enough to fight it effectively, and that understanding can sometimes lead to temptation and corruption. The fact that some powers fell also explains why spiritual warfare seems to be such an ongoing struggle rather than a problem that was solved once and for all. The third sphere: principalities, archangels, and angels. The third sphere is where angels start having jobs that directly affect human life in ways that people can observe and experience. Principalities are the angels responsible for overseeing nations, cities, and large groups of people. Each country supposedly has a principality assigned to guide its development and protect it from spiritual attacks that could destroy its culture or government. But principalities don't just protect nations. They also ensure that different cultures and societies develop in ways that serve God's overall plan for humanity. This means that they sometimes allow or even orchestrate conflicts between nations when those conflicts serve a larger divine purpose. Some traditions suggest that major historical events like the rise and fall of empires are actually the result of decisions made by principalities working together to guide human development. The book of Daniel refers to the Prince of Persia and the Prince of Greece in ways that suggest these are principalities assigned to those nations. Daniel also mentions that Michael is the principality assigned to Israel, which explains why Michael is often called the protector of the Jewish people. This system means that international relations aren't just political and economic. They're also spiritual, with angelic beings working behind the scenes to influence how nations interact with each other. Some mystical traditions suggest that people can actually communicate with the principality assigned to their country or region, asking for protection and guidance for their community. However, this is considered advanced spiritual practice that requires careful discernment, since fallen principalities can masquerade as legitimate spiritual authorities and lead entire nations astray. The choir of archangels in this system doesn't just include the famous 7 or 4 that most people know about. It includes all angels who serve as messengers between heaven and important human individuals or groups. These angels are responsible for delivering divine messages that affect large numbers of people or that have significant consequences for human history. They're also the angels most likely to appear to humans in visible form, since their job requires them to communicate in ways that people can understand. Finally, the choir simply called angels includes all the spiritual beings who interact directly with individual humans: guardian angels, angels who inspire artists and inventors, angels who provide comfort during difficult times, and angels who help people understand divine truth. These are the angels most people actually encounter in their daily lives, even if they don't realize it. Tier 4. Apocryphal and Enochian angels. Now we're diving into the deep end of angelology, exploring angels that appear in texts that didn't make it into the standard Bible, but which have been incredibly influential in shaping how people understand the spiritual world. The Book of Enoch, in particular, contains detailed descriptions of angels and their activities that are way more specific and bizarre than anything you'll find in canonical scripture. These texts were widely read and believed by early Christians and Jews, and they provide a much more complex picture of angelic hierarchy and activity than most people realize. The Watchers and their leaders. The Book of Enoch describes a group of angels called the Watchers, who were sent to Earth to observe humanity, but ended up becoming obsessed with human women and abandoning their heavenly duties. According to 1 Enoch, 200 of these Watchers, led by an angel named Semjaza, decided to marry human women and have children with them. But this wasn't just a romantic entanglement. It was a cosmic disaster that fundamentally corrupted both the spiritual and physical worlds.
The children of these unions were giants called Nephilim, who grew to enormous size and developed an insatiable appetite for violence and destruction. But even worse, the Watchers began teaching humans forbidden knowledge that was supposed to remain secret until humanity was spiritually mature enough to handle it. Azazel taught humans how to make weapons and armor, leading to the invention of warfare. Raphael taught astrology, Kokabel taught the signs of the stars, Ezekiel taught the knowledge of clouds, Arachiel taught the signs of the earth, Shamsiel taught the signs of the sun, and Sariel taught the course of the moon. This transfer of forbidden knowledge had catastrophic consequences. According to the text, humanity became so violent and corrupt that the earth was literally crying out to heaven for relief. The knowledge of cosmetics and jewelry led to vanity and sexual immorality, while the knowledge of weapons led to constant warfare. The knowledge of astrology and divination led people to try to manipulate spiritual forces instead of trusting in divine providence. God's response was swift and severe. He sent the archangels to bind the watchers and imprison them in dark places until the final judgment. Raphael was commanded to bind Azazel and throw him into a desert pit covered with rough and jagged rocks. Michael was told to bind Semjaza and the other leaders and make them watch as their giant children killed each other in battle. Gabriel was sent to destroy the Nephilim by causing them to fight against each other until none remained. But the corruption caused by the Watchers didn't end with their punishment. According to Enoch, the spirits of the dead Nephilim became demons that continue to torment humanity, and the forbidden knowledge they revealed continues to cause problems. This is why the text presents such detailed information about these angels. Understanding what went wrong helps explain why the world contains so much evil and suffering despite being created by a good God. Metatron, the voice of God. Metatron is probably the most mysterious and powerful angel in all of Jewish mysticism, and his origin story is unlike any other angel in existence. According to 3 Enoch, Metatron was originally a human being named Enoch who walked with God so closely that God eventually transformed him into an angel rather than letting him die. This transformation was so complete that Metatron became the only angel who sits on a throne in heaven and who shares some of God's own authority and power. The name Metatron is puzzling because it doesn't follow the typical Hebrew pattern for angel names, and scholars have proposed dozens of different explanations for its meaning. Some suggest it comes from Latin metator, meaning guide or measurer. Others think it derives from Greek metathronos, meaning one who serves behind the throne. Still others propose that it's related to the divine name itself, making Metatron a sort of reflection or echo of God's own essence. What makes Metatron truly unique is his role as the voice of God. According to Jewish mystical texts, when God speaks to other angels or to humans, the actual communication comes through Metatron rather than directly from the divine essence. This is necessary because God's true voice would be so overwhelming that it would destroy any created being who heard it directly. Metatron serves as a sort of cosmic translator, converting divine communication into forms that created beings can receive and understand. But Metatron's job goes way beyond just delivering messages. According to the Talmud, he's the celestial scribe who records every deed of every human being, maintaining the cosmic accounting system that will be used during the final judgment. Some texts describe him as having 365,000 eyes and 36 wings, with each wing large enough to cover the entire world. His body is supposedly covered with divine names and sacred letters, making him a sort of living Torah scroll. Seem like a strange detail, but it's actually theologically significant. In Jewish tradition, only humans wear shoes, while angels go barefoot because they're always standing on holy ground. The fact that Sandalphon wears sandals is a reminder that he was once human and that his angelic status is a gift rather than his original nature. According to the Talmud, Sandalphon is so tall that his head reaches from earth to heaven, making him a sort of cosmic bridge between the physical and spiritual worlds. Some texts describe him as constantly traveling up and down this vast height, collecting prayers from humans and delivering divine responses back to earth. But his job isn't just postal service. He's also responsible for determining which prayers are worthy to be presented to God and which ones need to be purified or redirected. The process of prayer weaving is described in beautiful and complex detail in Jewish mystical texts. According to these sources, Sandalphon takes individual prayers and combines them with the prayers of other people to create spiritual bouquets that are more beautiful and effective than any single prayer could be. He supposedly knows how to match prayers that complement each other and how to arrange them in patterns that reflect divine harmony and beauty. But Sandalphon also has a martial aspect that balances his role as prayer guardian. Some traditions describe him as a warrior angel who fights against forces that try to prevent prayers from reaching heaven. When demons or negative spiritual influences try to block or corrupt human communication with God, Sandalphon supposedly engages in spiritual combat to clear the way and ensure that sincere prayers can reach their destination. The angels of the seven heavens, the Book of Enoch, and other apocryphal texts describe a complex system of seven heavens, each ruled by different angels with specific responsibilities. This isn't just metaphorical. These texts provide detailed descriptions of what each heaven contains and which angels are in charge of various cosmic functions. Understanding this system gives insight into how ancient people understood the structure of reality and the organization of spiritual authority. The first heaven is ruled by Gabriel and contains the clouds, winds, and atmospheric phenomena that affect weather on Earth. According to 2 Enoch, this heaven is also where the angels who govern snow, ice, and dew have their headquarters. Gabriel oversees a vast bureaucracy of weather angels who work together to ensure that precipitation falls when and where it's needed to sustain life on Earth. The second heaven is described as a place of darkness where fallen angels are imprisoned while awaiting final judgment. This heaven is ruled by Raphael, whose job includes not just healing but also maintaining the cosmic prison system that keeps dangerous spiritual beings from interfering with the divine plan. Some texts describe this as a place of constant mourning, where the imprisoned angels weep for their lost status and beg for mercy. The third heaven contains the Garden of Eden, where the souls of the righteous go after death to await resurrection. This heaven is ruled by various angels whose names change between different texts, but who are consistently described as having authority over paradise and the rewards that await faithful souls. Some traditions place the tree of life in this heaven, guarded by angels with flaming swords. The fourth heaven is where the celestial Jerusalem exists, along with the temple where spiritual sacrifices are offered continuously. Michael is often described as the ruler of this heaven, where he leads the heavenly liturgy and oversees the cosmic worship that maintains the spiritual order of creation. Some texts describe this heaven as containing a perfect replica of every temple that has ever existed on Earth. The fifth heaven is the headquarters of the Watchers, who remained faithful to God, and it's described as a place of constant vigilance and monitoring of earthly affairs. The angels in this heaven are responsible for ensuring that the cosmic order is maintained and that violations of divine law are detected and reported to higher authorities. The sixth heaven is where the angels who govern natural laws and cosmic forces have their base of operations. This includes angels responsible for the movement of stars and planets, the changing of seasons, and the maintenance of physical constants that allow the universe to function predictably. Some texts describe this heaven as containing vast libraries where all knowledge about the natural world is stored. The seventh and highest heaven is where God's throne is located, surrounded by the Seraphim, Cherubim, and thrones we discussed earlier. Only the highest-ranking angels are allowed in this heaven, and even they can only approach the divine presence under specific circumstances and with proper preparation. This concludes our journey through the first 4 tiers of the Angelic Hierarchy Iceberg. We've moved from the angels that everyone knows to the complex bureaucratic structures of heaven, from simple guardian spirits to cosmic administrators managing the fundamental forces of reality. But we're still not at the bottom of this iceberg. In the remaining tiers, we'll explore the most obscure, controversial, and forbidden aspects of angelology, angels whose very names were considered too dangerous to speak, mystical traditions that claimed direct communication with heavenly beings, and modern interpretations that blur the line between religious belief and conspiracy theory. The deeper we go, the stranger and more complex this celestial hierarchy becomes, revealing aspects of spiritual reality that most people never imagine exist.